Welcome to this episode of BizTakeouts, Bizcommunity's soundbite-sized news to go, made possible by GfK, an unparalleled, always-on, AI-powered intelligence platform and consulting service for the consumer products industry globally. In this BizTakeouts interview, we speak to Zak Haeri, Managing Director, and Nicolet Pienaar, Head of Market Insights at GfK South Africa, to find out more about the latest market changes and trends, how consumer behavior is changing, and the importance of real-time access to the latest data and intelligent automation. So Zak, can you give us an overview of GfK's business in South Africa?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Angie. So GfK's mission is to help our clients grow from knowledge. And that's knowledge about the market. That's knowledge also about how consumers are responding to what's going on in the market. What we do is to help companies in the electronics, home appliances, and consumer goods sectors tackle big questions that they have, be that questions around what products are being sold where, in what quantities, at what prices, and then other kind of varied questions like, for example, the extent to which their brand is driving consumer choice or enabling them to charge a price premium on those products. Can even include things like how to optimize the price, the different pack formats that a company might offer end consumers, and things about like media spend. How do I optimize my media spend to maximize growth? How we do that is we partner with data owners, such as retailers. So retailers have rich data assets. We partner with them, and then we add value to that data. We add value to that data by aggregating it so we can represent the whole market. We also enrich that data, so adding different sources of data to that data we're collecting from retailers, be that on consumers or media, etc. And then we analyze it and then provide that information back to our clients. Now in South Africa, what that means is we're working with many of the top retailers, many of the top manufacturing companies in South Africa. So it's great to see the impact of our work in our daily lives. And the South African market is fascinatingly unique. You know, the resale landscape is really different here to elsewhere. So we've got a really distinct local flavor to our business, whilst we are, of course, a global company.
Thank you so much, Zak. And then, Nicolet, I'll direct the next question at you. Based on your consumer and market insights, what are some of the key trends you see unfolding in the South African market?
Very good question, Angie. I think one of the key things which we need to acknowledge is that we've been living with COVID and lockdown periods for the last 18 months, and it's very much reality. And a lot of the trends and developments which we are seeing in the South African market is off the back of COVID, and COVID being a catalyst for it. One of the things which we also need to understand is that South Africa, as unique as we are in the retail landscape and as unique we are in our consumer set, we are very much following the global trends and patterns which are emerging. One of the key things, of course, is eat from home, groom from home, work from home, where we are still seeing the categories which are supporting this live at home lifestyle really grow in the market. As an example of this, prior to the first lockdown, we saw such a strong increase in hair shavers and hair clippers as we couldn't go to the barbershop. And now that life is reopening up a little bit, instead of seeing the male grooming, we are seeing the female grooming really come to life, with hair dryers and hair stylists seeing the growth. Eat from home, very much underpinned by the idea of fitness and health and the consumer looking after themselves. So product categories such as juices and blenders and smartwatches to track that fitness element is still driving the category. And then work from home, because we are in this flexi workspace, we are still seeing categories such as monitors, high-end keyboard, mice, office chairs really adding to the category growth. The second key thing which we are observing across the market of the technical consumer goods space is also then this idea of premiumization. So yes, the consumer is eating and living and working from home, but they are really considering how they are spending their money. So they're not just buying for the sake of buying. They're looking at buying the most the most bang for their buck. A key example of this is this beautiful development which we are seeing in the fridge space, where side by side, 3-door, French door fridges is really seeing the growth as consumers are really evaluating where they are spending their money on. And then a third key trend is, of course, how we have managed to pull the idea of digitization and online behavior forward due to COVID, forcing us to entrench ourselves in that digital lifestyle.
That's super interesting, Nicolet. And while we're on that topic, as you mentioned, clearly the pandemic is still dictating consumer behavior, even as vaccine rollouts continue. Can you elaborate a bit more on the digital trends, which has been accelerated by COVID?
Absolutely. So there are multiple trends that is coming forth. One of the key things is the way in which the consumer is consuming online. Media boxes, streaming devices, paid content is seeing a massive increase in South Africa. One of the interesting things for that digital consumption is that consumers are incredibly happy also with free content and really absorbing as much as possible of the internet at the moment. The second key thing is, of course, how we are shopping online and like where we are purchasing from. Now, prior to COVID, the online channel saw a very linear growth rate of between 9 and 14% in the country, and COVID managed to accelerate this growth drastically. And Angie, it was so rapid that now at the end of 2021, we are effectively trading at volumes we should have only seen in 2025. And that was really on the back of COVID. Now, one of the things which we need to understand, it is not only the lockdown and forcing the consumers to buy online. This online retail shopping experience is very much still based on the idea of trust. And retailers and brands alike need to understand that the moment that the trust is broken in that online space, it will very much ripple through to all their digital and non-digital touch points. 40% of the consumers have said that COVID is very much affecting the way in which they are choosing the retailers which they are purchasing from, and also that trust is such an important driving factor that very often they are choosing to go buy from a brick and mortar because there's still this idea of a safety blanket that should anything go wrong either with a product or they have inquiries about a return, that there will be a human that will be able to assist them and sort out their issues. With that being said, that yes, digital is incredibly important, but very much balanced out with an omni-channel channel strategy, but also brand image strategy to ensure the customer that we are both online but also offline.
Those figures are insane. I mean, we're already seeing figures that were projected for 2025. That's really, really something to look into. And then while you've mentioned what this means for retailers, what do these trends imply for brands specifically?
So once again, it is incredibly difficult to isolate it to a single impact because COVID opened up a number of elements which needs to be considered and needs to be approached. I think for brands, there are two key areas which they need to consider. The one would be the consumer. So how they act with the consumer, how they reinforce their relationship with the consumer. During COVID, we were so immersed in this digital consumption, being constantly on our phones, absorbing so much content and watching the brands, that there's this massive fear of tech addiction emerging worldwide. It is very much a reality that consumers cannot pull themselves away from constantly being online, which means brands they need to really evaluate every single touch point which they have with their consumers and making sure that when they speak to their consumers, it is adding to their lives. In addition to that, during the lockdown phase and after that, consumers really had the time to think and to consider how they spend their money and who they align themselves with. We are seeing this increase in awareness when it comes to green, to recycling, to sea pollution, and consumers now more than ever are aligning themselves with brands that they identify with and which share the same values as they do. So really talking about what you stand for as a brand and sharing that with your consumer is more important than ever. In addition to this, you need to humanize your brand. So you need to make very clear that you are not just a corporate entity doing things, that you are a collection of humans going through the same set of things that your consumer is going through, and that they're able to identify with you. On the second point, what does it mean for brands and retail? Now, the supply chain was severely impacted. We saw an increase in shipping, we saw stock shortages, we saw raw material shortages. So a lot of the ways of doing business prior to COVID was heavily upset by COVID, which meant that there was a sense of creativity which emerged. New retail partnerships emerged. Suddenly brands that did not have shelf space got shelf space because they were the ones with stock and managed to feed the supply chains. My one piece of advice would be is that we keep the best of what COVID accelerated. So we think about, once again, how was our supply chain and our way of doing business, how was that improved? And most importantly, how do we protect the relationships with our retailers, which we formed during the COVID lockdown period?
I think that is excellent advice. Keep the good parts and maybe forget about the bad parts.
Just
then
build on the good.
Exactly.
Quite a few.
And then, Zak, we're going to come back to you. We haven't forgotten about you. In this volatile market, what is the best way for brands to ensure that they win?
Were it so simple that there was one strategy that's going to, one magic formula that's going to work, unfortunately, the world is considerably more complex than that, I'm afraid. And we also work with diversity of clients. So we see different strategies being played out within the market. However, at GfK, I'd say we would advocate for general principles, okay? Principles that we think are going to maximize success in this volatile market. The first is offense is your best defense. The immediate reaction when things go a little bit scary is to just stop, do nothing, wait and see. The challenge with that as a response is you don't exist in a vacuum. There are your competitors who might not be as polite or as fearful as you are. There's always going to be brands who are taking the calculated risk on this volatility, seeing it as an opportunity and making that offensive move. When we look to the last crisis as an example, back in 2008, 2009, the financial crisis, those brands that took that calculated risk, they've not lost their market share. So we don't see defense in this competitive landscape as a viable long-term strategy. The second thing we'd advocate for is to make decisions based on facts rather than gut or history. The reason for that is as much as we'd like to believe we're rational, we're not rational, right? So psychologists are aware that the long list of cognitive biases is growing year on year. So deciding based on facts can avoid the pitfalls of these cognitive biases. But the other reason why we'd advocate for that is a little bit more subtle. It's about enabling everyone within the organization to believe in the conclusion and the step that we're going to take, because if it's based on fact, everyone can follow the logic and reach the same conclusion, and you've got everyone pointing in the same direction. The third general principle we'd advocate for is what we call in GfK separating the signal from the noise. Okay, so there's been an explosion of data out there. There's lots of information out there. What we see in many cases, though, is that we call it analysis paralysis, right? You get this sort of log jam of just all this information coming in. You're not really sure what to do about it. So the advice here is to really focus on information that's meaningful. So we'd say it's those sort of three general principles we're advocating for from GfK's side.
Some really, really good information and insight and advice. Yeah. There's so much going on, so stick to the facts and make sure that everybody's on board with the same message. Definitely agree with that. And then on that note, how is GfK helping brands during these times?
Yeah, so I mean, we've of course had to change, right? Like everybody's had to change. Everybody's changed their consumption patterns, how they work, where they're working from. GfK, of course, has had to change as well. We've been in business since 1934. So that's a hell of a long time to be in business. So we've obviously had to change considerably over that period of time. But what I think we've done is to preserve a core, and that core is, again, like I said, helping our clients grow from knowledge. That's always been the core, and that remains the core. But around that core, the ways in which we're currently responding to this volatility and the client requests that come through, partly relating to this volatility, is we're changing how we serve our clients. So we're moving from providing descriptions of past events, like what's happened in the past, to trying to forecast happening in the future. So as opposed to looking back, we're now trying to look forward into the future to tell our clients what's going to happen next. We're also moving from a situation where we're providing information, we're providing facts, to recommendations of what we think a client should do based on these information sources and facts. And then the third big change we're seeing internally is moving from a situation where we're providing this information on request. So whenever you ask for it, we've got it always on. It's always in the cloud. It's always there. Of course, things like artificial intelligence have played a huge part in enabling those sorts of changes that I've just spoken about.
And then, like you've mentioned, artificial intelligence is fast becoming an essential tool for every organization. Whether a business is scaling up, building resilience, or trying to boost profit margins, it seems that AI has an important role to play in today's decision-making process. You've mentioned it's important, but how important is it to embrace AI-based decision-making?
Yeah, so it's a challenging one to answer, but maybe taking a step back, like in the early days of artificial intelligence, when it sort of hit the mainstream, I think it created a lot of hype. And there were also big claims made alongside that hype. But then it also seemed to have created quite a lot of fears, like about what does this mean for job security and the relationship between this artificial intelligence and human intelligence. I think rather happily for everyone concerned, over time we've adopted a more mature view of where artificial intelligence seems to add value to businesses. I think its role is a lot better understood today than perhaps 5 years ago. So aside from the obvious things that artificial intelligence is doing in terms of automation, taking over routine tasks, that sort of thing, from GfK's side, what we'd encourage is companies to see artificial intelligence as an enabler of human intelligence, as opposed to a substitute of human intelligence. As an example of that, in our flagship implementation of artificial intelligence called GFK Neuron, we've not only provided artificial intelligence predictions, so a kind of a black box prediction of what's going to happen, but we also provide some contextual information around that prediction. And that's there to, in part, enable a human user to tell a story around that and not just take that prediction on like, we just have to do that because the computer says so. I've got a little piece of information around that to build a story for my own understanding, but then, of course, to explain it to others within the organization so everyone can get behind that prediction.
I'm definitely getting the message that digital AI and the human element needs to be working together. That's a message that keeps coming up again and again. And I think that is very important for brands and companies to keep in mind. So thank you for bringing that message across. So Nicolet, could you please tell us more about the functionality of GFK Neuron and how it benefits the brands and retailers?
Yes, absolutely, Angie. I think Zak has made it very clear in his previous answer that it's really about enhancing the human decision-making and how we're trying to support our customers through the advanced analytics and AI. Some of the key things out of GFK Neuron is really to aid that human decision making, and there are three elements and support functions, which I am personally incredibly excited about. The first one is that it contains a module of forecasting. Now, if you can predict the future, of course, you can shape your actions accordingly, and you can act in a way that will give you the best return on investment and put yourself, in the best possible position to win in this incredibly volatile market, which we have been speaking about. So a forecasting element definitely makes the very unknown future a lot more digestible and actionable. The second key module or aid, which is built into GfK Neuron, is a wonderful promotional planner and to really help you optimize your promotional planning and your marketing spend. Now, the South African consumer is very well trained to react to a promotion. But of course, the core question to brands would be, how do I keep that as profitable as possible? Because at the end of the day, we are all here to make money. Now, the promotional planner identifies a metric called temporary price reduction elasticity, which identifies items or SKUs in your lineup that will perform the best. And also what the intelligence is telling you is what that promotional discount level should be. So what will the uplift be on a 15% promotion or 20% promotion when you put it into trade? In addition to that, the intelligence will tell you what SKUs or what items to push into and what element of cannibalization it will have across your portfolio. So really helping you to make the best informed decision as to what items to put in promotion and when. The third piece of intelligence which GfK Neuron is giving to our clients is the idea of brand revenue or brand premium. Now, brand premium is, in a simple sentence, how much more consumers are willing to pay for your brand over a competitive brand with very similar features or similar product. And one of the brands with the highest brand premium or brand revenue is the handbag brand Louis Vuitton, as consumers are really willing to spend thousands of dollars more to own that leather tote over any other brand. So it is really the aspiration of your brand, which we are commenting on. Also, what the platform then does is to tell you how to improve your brand premium or your brand revenue, and when you should be pushing a volume game. So when do we really go for the units and driving that consumer demand, or when we should start focusing on value, increasing our profitability, making money, to be able to squarely cement ourselves as a premium brand or to increase our brand revenue. And by understanding what to do, you can really implement those learnings in your everyday strategies, such as your product strategy, your pricing strategy, your promotional strategy, to really keep your brand as profitable as possible.
It seems like AI-based decision-making is a necessity for brands these days. Zak, perhaps you could conclude by telling us what you think the future will look like for data and business intelligence.
Yeah, let me just look into my crystal ball and tell you that. So it's without getting too specific, I think we can be certain of a few things, right? So we're operating in free markets, and the biggest driver of change within those free markets is competition. That's only going to get more and more intense. So what that means for business intelligence, I'd say, is the most advanced business intelligence today is over time going to be more and more commonplace. So what's advanced today is going to become very, very commonplace. I think that's just a general principle of free markets. But the best business intelligence in the world is useless if it's not given to the right person at the right time in a format that person can take action on. And so we've seen quite a few implementations of business intelligence that are fantastic, that are perfect, but not usable. And then it's essentially the value of that is precisely zero, perhaps even negative. So I think one trend we will see in the future is a more seamless fit between the business intelligence that we're creating and the user, a better fit between the person and the machine, if you like. And that more seamless fit, I think, will be based on a more mature understanding of the imperfect nature of humans, and then how to design a system that really works within those imperfections, as opposed to just demands perfection all the time, something like that.
Well, I'm definitely excited to see what GfK has in store and what the future holds for GfK Neuron as well, and the benefits for brands. So thank you so much, Zak and Nicolet, for joining me today. That's a wrap on today's show, with thanks to GfK for making it possible. It's BizTakeouts. Take it where you like it, when you like it. Bye for now.